I opened my eyes after emergency cancer surgery, still half-drugged, expecting to see my boy waiting. Instead, I saw his message. Locks changed. Don't come back. Hello, my name's Harold Bennett, and most folks at St. Matthew's Private Academy think I'm just the janitor who never takes a day off. That's fine by me. I like quiet work, floors that shine, windows that don't smudge, and kids who wave on their way to class. Nobody looks twice at the old guy pushing the mop bucket, and that's exactly how I've managed to keep a secret for 15 years. See, my late wife, Clara, taught here before she passed. Best teacher those kids ever had. Soft voice, hard hands, and a heart too big for her paycheck. When she died, the town filled the chapel. I remember standing at the back, broom still leaning in the hallway, thinking, they'll forget her in a month. But they didn't, and I made sure they never would. Every scholarship that went to a struggling student, every new set of library books, every heater repair in winter, that wasn't the school's budget. That was Clara's trust, $5.2 million she left behind, money I invested quietly, just the way she'd want. Nobody knew. Not the staff, not the kids, not even my son. Then, the only thing I ever said was, Clara wanted children to learn, not to know who paid for their books. I live in a small apartment a few blocks from the academy. One bedroom, faded photos on the wall, a coffee pot older than some teachers. I keep Clara's rocking chair by the window. She used to grade papers there. I keep it empty, just facing the streetlights. Nights are long without her. Ethan visits once in a while, usually when he needs something signed. He's a real estate agent now. Wears suits sharper than knives, drives a car that hums like money. He talks fast and listens slow. Sometimes when he checks his watch while I'm talking, I remember the boy who used to build forts out of couch cushions and call me Captain Dad. That kid's long gone. Still, I try. Every Sunday I text coffee at my place. Every time I get busy this week, Dad. One afternoon I caught him showing a house nearby. I waved across the yard, proud as anything, but he looked away, pretended not to see me. Later he called to explain. Said his client thought I was the groundskeeper. You know how people are, he said, laughing it off. I just didn't want to confuse anyone. I laughed too, but that night I didn't sleep. Truth is, Ethan's ashamed of me. Not because I mop floors, but because I'm comfortable with it. He wants to climb ladders, shake hands, sit at tables where folks wear cufflinks and use words like synergy. I just want my floors clean and my coffee hot. Then, last winter, I got the call. My oncologist, Dr. Myers, spoke softly, too softly. The cancer was back. Lungs this time, aggressive but operable, she said. I remember nodding, even smiling. After Clara, I stopped being afraid of dying. When I told Ethan, his face tightened, then relaxed in that polite, distant way. Don't worry, Dad, he said. I'll handle everything. For a moment, I felt relieved. My boy, taking care of things. But something about his tone hung too calm, too quick, stuck with me. He started asking for my medical records, my bank passwords, even the lease to my apartment for safekeeping. I thought he was just being cautious. 2 days before surgery, he came by with takeout. Sat on my couch, smiled like a salesman. You know, Dad, maybe it's time we think about assisted living. You'd get full-time care, meals, nurses, and you deserve that. I told him, this is my home, son. I can manage fine. He looked disappointed. We'll talk later, he said, tapping his phone. The next morning, I went in for surgery. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took me under was a nurse saying, your son signed the consent forms. Such a nice young man. When I woke up, my throat burned from the breathing tube. The room was empty, soft beeping from the monitor beside me. I turned my head expecting to see Ethan in the chair by the window. Instead, my phone blinked on the nightstand. One new message. I squinted through the haze, opened it. Ethan, Dad, I changed the locks. You'll be staying at a state home now. It's better for you. I blinked, thinking maybe it was the meds. I read it again. The words didn't change. My hands started shaking. I tried calling him, no answer. A nurse came in, smiling. You're doing great, Mr. Bennett. Rest now. I turned the screen away before she could see it. That night, when the hospital went quiet, I stared at the ceiling tiles and thought about Clara. I could almost hear her voice. Don't let him take what's yours. Harold. I was too weak to fight back, but something inside me hardened. The son I raised had locked me out of my own life. And maybe, just maybe, he thought that would be the end of me. He didn't know the floors I cleaned were under buildings I owned. He didn't know the man he dismissed as just the janitor was still his mother's keeper, and her legacy's gatekeeper. As the morphine drifted through my veins, I whispered into the dark, "All right, Ethan, handle everything." But this time I wasn't talking about the surgery. When they wheeled me out of the hospital 3 days later, I still had that soft chemical taste of anesthesia in my mouth, and the ache of stitches along my ribs. All I wanted was my recliner, my own coffee, and the quiet hum of the radio in my apartment. But when the taxi pulled up in front of my building, something was wrong. The brass numbers on my door looked freshly polished, and there, taped right beneath them, was a white envelope. I tore it open with shaking fingers. Notice of restricted entry. Occupant deemed mentally unfit. Power of attorney transferred to Ethan Bennett. Below it, my own signature, except I'd never signed it. For a long moment, I just stood there on the landing, the winter air slicing through my hospital gown under my coat. Someone across the hall peeked through a cracked door, then shut it fast. I tried my key. It didn't fit. My hands went numb, not from the cold, but from disbelief. Inside those walls were everything I owned. Clara's rocking chair, our wedding photo, the journal she kept through chemo, the box of Christmas ornaments we never stopped adding to. Now it was all behind a lock that didn't recognize me anymore. I called Ethan, straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. On the third call, a text came back. "Dad, please don't make this harder. The doctors agree you need rest. I've arranged everything." Doctors. Arranged. The words made me dizzy. I went to the building office, hoping maybe it was a mix-up. The manager, Greg, looked nervous. "Mr. Bennett, your son said you moved to a care facility. He brought paperwork. Power of attorney, notarized and everything." "Greg," I said, "do I look like I belong in a home?" He looked down. "I'm sorry, sir. It's out of my hands." That night I slept sitting up in a bus shelter 2 blocks away, hospital blanket still around my shoulders. Snow dusted the pavement. I watched my own apartment light go dark around midnight. I used to think loneliness was silence. Turns out it's watching your life from outside a window. The next morning I made my way to St. Matthew's Academy. I didn't want to scare anyone, just needed warmth, a place to think. I still had my keys to the supply closet. When Mrs. Green, the principal, found me there, I expected questions. Instead, she poured me coffee in one of the teacher mugs. "Harold Bennett," she said, "if you tell me you're fine, I'll call you a liar." I told her everything. Not every detail, just enough. Ethan's text, the locks, the papers. She listened quietly, the way Clara used to when kids told half-truths about missing homework. When I finished, she said, "Come with me." We went to her office. She opened a file drawer, pulled out a binder. Donations, scholarships, property records. She flipped through until she stopped on a page labeled, "Bennett Family Trust. There's something you should..." "See," she said, it listed the trust as owner of 4 school properties, the same ones Ethan's firm had been managing. My name wasn't on the donor section, just the LLC title, CB Holdings. Clara Bennett. Mrs. Green frowned. Last week, Ethan came by asking for these same files. Said he needed to update tax paperwork. I told him I couldn't hand them over without your consent. He didn't look pleased. That was the moment something inside me began to shift. A slow, quiet awakening beneath the ache and humiliation. Ethan hadn't just locked me out of my home. He was trying to lock me out of Clara's legacy. Mrs. Green leaned across the desk. "You're not crazy, Harold. And you're not helpless. Whatever he's done, we'll figure it out." Her words steadied me more than the coffee did. For the first time in days, I felt seen. She helped me file a report with the county clerk. A temporary inquiry into guardianship fraud. It wasn't much, but it froze Ethan's legal control until a review could happen. Still, I had nowhere to go that night. Mrs. Green offered her couch. I refused, too proud. Instead, she slipped a motel keycard into my coat pocket before I left. "Room's already paid," she said. "Don't argue." The motel was off Route 23 beside a diner that smelled like burnt toast and engine grease. I sat on the bed, flicking through channels, not watching anything. On the nightstand was a framed photo of a smiling couple, probably the motel owner and his wife. I turned it face down. Then I took out my wallet and unfolded a creased picture of Clara. She was holding a box of chalk, smiling that tired smile teachers have on Fridays. I whispered. "You wouldn't believe what your boy's done." But in the quiet, I could almost hear her say back, "You always underestimate people, especially him." Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd loved him so blindly that I'd never noticed what pride can rot when it goes unchecked. By midnight, the plan wasn't clear, but the emotion was, not rage, not even grief, just a deep, steady knowing that I couldn't let Ethan win. Not because of money, not even because of me, because everything he was trying to steal had Clara's fingerprints on it. As I turned off the light, the motel's neon sign blinked through the curtains, red letters that spelled vacancy. For the first time, I realized it didn't just mean the room was empty. It meant I was too, but not for long. I've always believed there's a rhythm to cleaning floors. Slow, steady, deliberate. It's not so different from rebuilding a life after someone tries to take it from you. The morning after my first night at the motel, I woke up before dawn, out of habit. My body ached, but my mind was clear for the first time in weeks. I walked to the diner next door, sat in a corner booth, and ordered black coffee and oatmeal. The waitress, a woman about my age with tired eyes and a soft smile, said, "Rough night?" I nodded. "Just one of many." She refilled my cup without asking, and I took out the old notebook I'd found in my jacket pocket, Clara's ledger. She used to record every penny that went in or out of her classroom fund. "Every dollar tells a story," she'd say. That morning I started writing my own. On the first page I wrote, "Ethan, locks changed. Apartment, restricted access. Power of attorney forged. Trust, compromised." The more I wrote, the steadier my hand got. By noon, I walked into the First Ohio Savings Bank where the trust was held. The manager, Mr. Calloway, had known Clara. I used to mop his church floors back when he was a deacon. His face went pale when I told him what happened. He pulled up the digital records, scrolled for a while, then stopped. "Harold, there are recent authorizations here under your name, but this isn't your signature." He turned the screen. The letters were close, but the loops were wrong, the slant too fast. Ethan had signed them 2 withdrawals. Both marked management transfers, total $142,000. My stomach dropped. "Can we freeze access?" I asked. "Not without a legal motion," he said quietly. "But we can flag the account. If anyone touches it, I'll get an alert." That was enough for now. I left the bank with copies of the transactions and walked to the library, the same one Clara used to spend Saturdays in, tutoring kids who couldn't afford extra lessons. The librarian, Mrs. Hull, recognized me right away. "Mr. Bennett, been too long. You still keeping this place cleaner than I do?" "Trying to," I smiled. "Could I use the computer for a bit?" There in that dusty corner of small-town quiet, I searched Ethan's firm name, Whitefield and Carrington Realty. His profile popped up, bright smile, slick suit, a caption that made my jaw tighten. "Ethan Bennett, son of the late educator Clara Bennett, continues his family's legacy of service through real estate revitalization." Service. I almost laughed. I printed everything, every fake quote. Every photo of him shaking hands with local developers, pretending to be the man his mother thought he'd become. Back at the motel, I spread it all on the bed, printouts, bank statements, Clara's ledger. The room looked like a detective's caseboard, only neater. Years of janitorial order came in handy. I color-coded the files using sticky notes Mrs. Green had given me. Blue for what I knew. Red for what Ethan took. Green for what I could still control. That night I called Mrs. Green again. "I need a favor," I said. She met me at the school after hours under the hallway lights that buzzed like cicadas. "What do you need?" "I need every document that shows ownership of the Academy's properties, and copies of all donation transfers under CB Holdings." She didn't ask why. She just nodded and unlocked her office. While she printed, I told her the truth about the trust, the investments, the ownership stakes. For the first time, someone other than me knew that the janitor sweeping her floors owned nearly half the campus. Mrs. Green put the pages in a folder, handed it to me. "Harold, what are you planning?" "Nothing foolish," I said. "Just cleaning up another mess." Over the next week, I played dumb. I called Ethan once, left a message pretending to be confused about bank letters and missing mail. He didn't reply, but the silence told me he was nervous. The hospital billing department called too. Apparently, Ethan had tried to reroute my medical reimbursements to a different account. That's when I realized this wasn't about spite. It was about greed. He wanted every inch of control. So I started building something of my own, a paper trail. Every night I logged transactions, dates, names, and phone numbers into Clara's ledger. Each page was quiet evidence, and somewhere in the middle of that silence, revenge stopped feeling like anger. It felt like justice waiting for daylight. By the second week, I'd arranged a meeting with Mr. Calloway at the bank and Mrs. Green as my witness. Together, we drafted a motion to restore my power of attorney and filed a fraud report with the county probate court. It would take time. The law moved slow, but it was moving. Then came the unexpected twist. One evening, while I was back at the diner, that same waitress handed me an envelope. "Guy dropped this off for you earlier," she said. Didn't leave a name. Inside was a thick stack of glossy cards, Ethan's wedding invitations, gold lettering, fancy cursive. "Ethan Bennett and Olivia Carter invite you to celebrate their engagement dinner." At the bottom, the address, the Silver Elm Country Club. I stared at it for a long time. Mrs. Green once told me, "People like Ethan only understand lessons when they're taught in the language they speak." Pride. That night, I wrote one more line in Clara's ledger, underlined twice, "Attend the dinner." Bring the truth. The night of the dinner, I pressed my only suit, the same dark gray one I'd worn to Clara's funeral. The fabric smelled faintly of mothballs and memory. I slipped Clara's old wedding band into my breast pocket, not for luck, but as a reminder of who I was walking in for. The Silver Elm Country Club sat on a hill outside town, all glass doors and chandeliers pretending to be stars. I stood at the entrance a moment, watching valet boys take keys from people whose shoes cost more than my monthly paycheck used to. Inside, the room glowed gold and white. Tables were set with polished silverware, candles flickering like tiny heartbeats. A string quartet played something slow and expensive. At the center table, I saw Ethan, tan, tailored, every hair in place. On his arm was Olivia Carter, daughter of the developer whose name sat on half the county's buildings. Her family surrounded them, laughing softly, the sound of money perfectly at ease. I walked in slow, cane tapping once per step. Conversations dimmed. Someone whispered my name. "Isn't that the janitor from St. Matthew's?" Ethan turned. For a split second, the color drained from his face. Then came the smile, polished, hollow. "Dad," he said, forcing a laugh. "You weren't supposed to—" "I know," I interrupted. "Wasn't expected. But I figured since my name's on a few of the properties paying for this place, I'd stop by." The room fell quiet. Olivia blinked. "Wait, what?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "He's joking. My dad has been confused lately." That word, confused, hit me like a slap. I took another slow step forward. "You're right, son. I was confused. Thought I raised a man. Turns out I raised a salesman." Mrs. Green emerged from the back corner where she'd been waiting, calm as a Sunday sermon. She carried a leather folder, the same one we'd filled with every piece of evidence. "Evening, everyone," she said, voice even. "Sorry to intrude, but we have some business to clear up." Ethan's face flushed. "What are you doing here?" She placed the folder on the table. "Returning documents. These belong to Mr. Bennett, Harold Bennett, the legal trustee of the Clara Bennett Educational Fund and sole owner of CB Holdings, LLC. You could hear the violinist stop mid-note. Olivia looked between us. "CB Holdings, that's your mother's initials," I nodded. "Your fiancé's been borrowing my wife's name to buy and sell properties. Illegally, as it turns out." Ethan stood up fast. "Dad, that's not what this is." I cut him off, sliding 3 envelopes from my coat pocket and laying them neatly on the white linen. "Let's not waste anyone's dinner. These are for you." He didn't touch them, just stared. I opened the first. "Eviction notice," I said. "Effective immediately. The apartment you're living in? Owned by the trust. Consider the locks changed. Poetic, isn't it?" A few people gasped softly. I opened the second. Revocation of inheritance. You've been removed as beneficiary. Every dollar you stole, every asset you tried to transfer, it all reverts to the educational trust. That's where your mother wanted it. His throat bobbed. "And this last one," I said, opening the final envelope, "is a detailed ledger of every payment I made for your car, your apartment, and your firm investments. Signed debt agreement, $390,000 plus interest. Mrs. Green witnessed the notarization. Olivia took the paper, scanning it. Her eyes widened. Ethan, this is dated 2 years ago. He reached for it, but she pulled her hand back. You said your father was retired and that he didn't have money. He doesn't, Ethan stammered. He's manipulating. I raised a hand. Son, you've been manipulating people so long you think honesty's a trick. Then I leaned closer, voice low enough only he could hear. You stole your mother's legacy to buy yourself a future. You sold your father's name to make yourself bigger. But pride doesn't build anything that lasts. He said nothing. Just stared at the tablecloth, the confidence draining from him in silence. Olivia's father stood. I think we've heard enough, Miss Carter. We'll handle this privately. He looked at Ethan with cold disappointment, the kind men in his world reserve for the unworthy. Ethan tried to speak, but words wouldn't come. I straightened my coat. I'll be leaving now, I said quietly. Didn't come here to humiliate you, son. I came to reclaim what was never yours. I turned to Olivia and her family. Clara believed in education. Every penny you saw him flashing came from a teacher's dream, not a broker's deal. I suggest you remember that when you pick the people you trust. Mrs. Green followed me to the door. Behind us, the room was dead silent. When we stepped outside, the night air was cool and clean. The moon hung over the parking lot like a soft eye watching everything. She touched my shoulder. You okay? I nodded. I've been cleaning messes my whole life, Mrs. Green. This one just took a little longer. As we walked to my truck, I looked back through the big glass windows. Ethan sat alone now, staring at the envelopes. Olivia's chair was empty. I didn't feel joy. Not even relief. Just quiet. Clara used to say, real lessons don't need applause, just understanding. Tonight, my son got his first one in years. All right, before we jump to the end of this story, I've got a tiny request for you. If you find this awesome tale entertaining, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Now we continue. The morning after the dinner, I unlocked the doors of St. Matthew's Academy just like I had for 20 years. The smell of waxed floors, chalk dust, and coffee from the teacher's lounge greeted me like old friends. My name tag still said Harold Bennett, maintenance, and that was fine by me. I ran my hand along the wooden banister Clara used to lean against between classes. Every creak, every scuff on the floor had its own story. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the building breathe with me again. Mrs. Green met me in the hall. You don't have to come in today, you know, she said gently. I know, I replied. But the pipes don't fix themselves, and peace doesn't come sitting at home. She smiled, then handed me a small envelope. This came for you. It was postmarked that morning. No return address, just my name in a shaky hand. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a photo. The photo showed Ethan as a boy, maybe 8 years old, sitting on Clara's shoulders, both of them laughing. The note said only, Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know what I'd become. I'm trying to fix it. I stood there a while, the paper trembling in my hand. For a long moment, I didn't know whether to cry or pray. Maybe both. That afternoon, I went to the old chapel behind the academy, the one where Clara's memorial plaque hung beneath the stained glass window. The light filtered through the glass in streaks of blue and gold, falling across the marble floor like quiet forgiveness. I sat on the bench and spoke aloud, half to Clara, half to the silence. You were right, love. He had to fall before he could stand. I just hope he finds the ground steady again. The next few weeks passed softly. The trust lawyers finalized the papers. The scholarship program doubled, now renamed the Bennett Fund for Second Chances. Mrs. Green suggested it, saying, everyone deserves a way back. Ethan didn't come by right away. But one evening in late winter, just as the sun was dipping below the snowy rooftops, I saw a car park across the street. He sat there for a while, engine running, then finally stepped out. He looked thinner, older. No suit this time, just jeans and a coat a size too big. He walked up slow, stopping at the gate. Dad? He said quietly, voice rough. I wiped my hands on my rag. Evening, son. I don't know what to say. Then don't, I said. Just tell me what you've learned. He took a breath. That I spent my whole life trying to impress people who don't even remember my name. And the one person who did, I betrayed. We stood there in the cold, no words for a while. Finally, I nodded toward the building. You know, your mother used to stay late after class. helping kids who failed their exams. Said no one learns anything from being left behind. His eyes filled. Do you think she'd forgive me? I looked up at the window, where the last light touched Clara's name. I think she already has. He swallowed hard. And you? I took a slow breath. Forgiveness isn't a door, son. It's a hallway. You don't walk through it all at once and you just keep walking. He nodded, tears streaking his cheeks, and I finally opened the gate. We walked inside together, down the same hall where he'd once run as a boy with a backpack too big for his shoulders. The school lights flickered on, one by one like blessings being whispered from above. He looked around. You still sweep these halls? Every day, I said. Keeps me humble. Reminds me who I am, Ethan smiled faintly. Maybe I could help? I handed him a spare broom leaning against the wall. Then start there. For the first time in years, we worked side by side, and father and son, two silhouettes against the golden light reflecting off the floor. When we finished, I leaned on my broom and looked at him. You know, your mother once told me the hardest part of teaching isn't getting someone to learn. It's getting them to unlearn what pride taught them. He nodded slowly. I'm trying, Dad. I know. We stood there quietly as snow began to fall outside. The world was still, gentle. Somewhere I could almost hear Clara's laughter echoing down the corridor. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel like a janitor cleaning up after other people's mistakes. I felt like a man finally sweeping his way home.